I had spent my entire life working hard, saving every penny, and planning for the day when I could finally sit back, relax, and enjoy a peaceful retirement. No more early morning commutes, no more bosses breathing down my neck, and definitely no more stress. All I wanted was a quiet piece of land where I could wake up to the sound of birds, not honking traffic. After months of searching, I found the perfect spot. A beautiful property just outside a neighborhood that looked nice but had one crucial advantage. It wasn't part of an HOA. I had heard the horror stories. People fined for the color of their front door, being told what flowers they could plant, even being forced to get permission to fly the American flag. No, thank you. I wasn't about to let some power-hungry HOA board tell me how to live my life. So when I signed those closing papers, I felt like I had won the lottery. My land, my rules. At least that's what I thought. But I had no idea that trouble was already brewing just a few houses down the road in the form of a woman named Karen, a woman who believed that the entire world should bow to her authority. I had barely been on my property for a week before I got my first taste of Karen's delusions of grandeur. It was a crisp autumn morning, and I was out in my yard, enjoying the fresh air and the feeling of complete freedom when I heard the unmistakable sound of heels clacking against pavement. I turned around to see a woman in her mid-50s striding up my driveway like she owned the place, a clipboard tucked under one arm and a permanent scowl on her face. She was the kind of woman you could spot a mile away. The Karen haircut, the designer purse, and the air of someone who had spent way too much time bossing people around. "Good morning," I said, trying to be neighborly. She didn't return the greeting. Instead, she gave my property a long, slow scan like she was assessing a crime scene. "I'm Karen, the president of the HOA," she finally said, as if I should be impressed. I just nodded. "Nice to meet you, Karen. What can I do for you?" Her frown deepened. "I noticed you haven't submitted any approval forms for modifications to your property. I assume you're aware of our community guidelines." I raised an eyebrow. "Community guidelines?" She sighed like I was a particularly slow student. "The rules that all homeowners must follow." That's when I smiled. "Oh, I'm not in the HOA." She blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" "My property isn't part of the HOA," I explained. "It's separate land. I checked before I bought it." For a second, Karen looked like she had just bitten into a lemon. Then she forced a tight smile. "Well, our HOA governs the entire community, and it's important to maintain a certain standard." I could already tell where this was going. "Karen, let me stop you right there. I don't answer to the HOA. I answer to the law, and as long as I'm following county regulations, I'll do as I please." That's when I saw it, that flicker of frustration in her eyes. Karen wasn't used to hearing the word no, but instead of pushing further, she just gave me a stiff nod. "We'll see about that," she muttered before storming off. I shook my head, thinking that was the end of it. I had no idea that Karen was about to make it her personal mission to try and control me, even though I didn't live under her rule. A few weeks later, I decided to install a fence. Not just any fence, an electric one. Now, before you start picturing some high-voltage monstrosity, let me be clear. It wasn't dangerous. It was a low-voltage electric deterrent designed to keep coyotes and other critters off my land. I had some plans to raise a few animals and didn't want them getting picked off by predators. Plus, let's be honest, I also wanted a little privacy. The installation went smoothly, and I couldn't have been happier. That is, until Karen came storming back onto my property like a one-woman SWAT team. "What is that?" she demanded, pointing at the fence like it was a weapon of mass destruction. I took a sip of my coffee, completely unbothered. "That, Karen, is my fence." She crossed her arms, her nostrils flaring. "That's illegal. You can't just put up an electric fence. It's dangerous." I chuckled. "It's perfectly legal. It meets all safety codes. It's low voltage, clearly marked, and designed to keep animals out, not people." Karen wasn't listening. She was already pulling out her phone. "I'm reporting this to the HOA." I sighed. "Karen, I'll say this one last time. I'm not in your HOA." But Karen wasn't interested in facts. She had a mission, and she wasn't about to let something as trivial as the law stop her. The very next day, I got a letter in my mailbox. It was from the HOA, demanding that I remove my unauthorized structure or face fines. It would have been hilarious if it weren't so infuriating. I walked over to Karen's house, knocked on her door, and held up the letter. "Nice try, Karen," I said, shaking my head. "But your HOA has no authority over me." She had the audacity to smirk. "We'll see about that." That's when I realized Karen wasn't just your typical busybody. She was the kind of person who thrived on control, who needed to feel like she had power over others. And when she encountered someone she couldn't control, she lost her mind. I tossed the letter into her recycling bin and walked away. If Karen wanted a fight, she was about to find out that I wasn't someone who backed down easily. It didn't take long. Less than 48 hours later, I was sitting on my porch, enjoying a cold beer, when I saw 2 squad cars pull up in front of my driveway. I sighed, already knowing exactly who was responsible. Sure enough, Karen came marching up right behind them, arms crossed, looking like she had just won the lottery. "Sir, we received a complaint about a hazardous electric fence on this property," one of the officers said. I nodded. I figured as much. "You want to take a look?" The officers examined the fence while Karen stood there, smirking like the cat that caught the canary. But her victory was short-lived. "Well," the officer finally said, turning back to Karen, "this fence is completely legal. It's up to code, properly marked, and doesn't pose a public danger." Karen's jaw nearly hit the floor. But, the officer shook his head. "Ma'am, calling police for a non-issue is a waste of resources. If you continue to harass this man, you could be looking at a charge for filing false reports." I could have sworn I saw Karen's eye twitch. As the officers drove away, I turned to Karen and smiled. "We'll see about that," I said, throwing her own words back at her. Then I turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing there, speechless.